listening, wherever you are in the world. We're going to talk about early stage startup. We're going to talk about funding. And most importantly, we're going to talk about growth. I feel like all I talk about is growth all of the time, because growth is the only thing that matters. And I saw this post from a founder the other day. Actually, it was an Indian founder, which kind of made me even a little bit more upset, because Indians are generally smarter about this, everything. And the whole post was like, it was like a 4-paragraph post about how investors should build better relationships with founders, or founders should build better relationships. I mean, who fucking cares? Who cares? This is not a marriage. It's not anything else. Look, and my only comment back was, I wish a single sentence was about growth with your actual customers, who are the people that you should be building a real relationship with. We have moved so far on this ridiculous, insane cycle that for some godforsaken reason, founders believe that it's their God-given right to be able to receive investment from investors so they can build this dream, which is nothing more than that, right? And by the way, investors our venture capitalists are not oblivious to this either, because venture capitalists do the same thing with their limited partners. Rather than focusing on building great product and letting the product speak for ourselves, we spend all of our time wondering why investors are not putting money into us. Well, let me tell you why. Because we haven't convinced them yet. Me as a VC, you as a founder, if I don't have $1 billion fund, it's because I haven't convinced enough people that I should have $1 billion fund, which means I don't deserve $1 billion fund. If you don't have enough money to be able to build your tech, drive your revenue, get your sales, build your business, hire your people, it's because you don't deserve the investment that's coming in. And the more that we focus on, I deserve this, I deserve that, I should be getting $1 million here. Oh my God, this investor is going to get it when they find out their exit. No, nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares now. Nobody cares in the future. They don't care about Brian McMahon. They don't care about you. The only people, maybe, who cares about you is your mom and your dad. And maybe I can throw your kids and your wife, your husband in there as well. That's it. Nobody else cares. Even your customers don't care until you give them a product which they need more than any other product in the market. So look, in summary, I think it's good to get a rant out of the way first thing in the morning. But look, in summary, I am not saying don't get investment. I am not saying don't get investors. I'm just saying don't obsess on it. Obsess on proving why you are of value. Remember, millions and millions and millions of founders every year will start and build and grow startups, right? Most of these statistics nobody will ever see. It's a 16-year-old boy or girl in their room trying to build out whatever fast code they can do. Or it's an attorney starting their own attorney firm, or an accountant, or it's a tech company looking to scale to the moon. Millions. Of those millions, only a couple of hundred are going to make it to unicorn status. Unicorn is $1 billion company. Right? Until you're hitting $100 million in valuation that can be achieved on the secondary markets, you're of no value to anyone. Nobody's making any money out of your company. And that is a small, small, small club. Your job as a founder, and my job as a general partner in a venture capital firm, is to convince people with money that they should deploy that money to us and that we will get them a better return. You should not expect that that happens on one meeting with one pitch deck. It can, but it shouldn't, right? There is always the stupid person rule that there's plenty of stupid people out there that you can find as a founder, or that we can find as a general partner. But you have to focus on your customer. I swear to you, if you focus on your customer, if you build product, if you share progress, if you make progress, then investors will want to invest in your company. But that's the game. There's absolutely no other game out there, okay? That's the beginning. Now, that's my piece. I want to give you one more piece, which is slightly more positive. Actually, it's not slightly more positive. It is monstrously more positive, because I want to share this journey that I'm on with Matchbook right now and the incredible job that they're doing. And then I want to bring in an incredible go-to-market specialist who's going to speak to us a lot about everything from the legalities that are involved with being able to grow, and also just as a founder, what does it take to be able to take you from zero to zero to one to many, okay? And how you're going to build your company from there. Before I bring David in, let me talk a little bit about this morning, literally 2 hours ago. So as you may know, we've invested in this incredible company called Matchbook AI. Matchbook AI are the epicenter of data. So what do I mean by that? Folks like Dun & Bradstreet, S&P, Oracle, Salesforce, Moody's, all those guys have got lots of data, Databricks. All those folks have got lots of data. Then they push that data out to the market. What's the problem? The market can't take the data because the data is in such a, even though it's structured, it's very hard to make any logic out of it. So they need services or AI or technology like Matchbook. And Matchbook is being run by an incredible CEO, which they still are, which we invested into before, and we subsequently invested more into it. However, we have more recently taken a co-founding position. And this is so hot off the press. It's not even off the press yet, but it will be later on this week. And this position is because we can add huge value on the sales side of it. And so there are a number of incredible things. And I'm kind of doing this for a couple of reasons. One, because my job is to get a better return for our limited partner. Remember, the same as yours. That means I do the things that will get a better return. This is a great company. It will get a better return. Number two, the other reason I do it is because I need to. I'm a VC, but come on, VC is boring. I need to be in the fight. If I'm not in the trenches, proving to myself that I'm worthy of advising early stage founders and investing in them, then what's the point? So I need it, right? And so when I start any sales on anywhere, it's all about seeking to understand before being understood. That is the key to everything. We all come in with our pre-designed plans that we've learned over years, but trust me, those pre-designed plans are a waste of time if we don't have it all lined up. So with all of that being said, what I did was I went into the organization, started doing a lot of research. And then after lots of things we've been doing, and I want to share one thing on every single call, but this piece was just very inspirational for me today, was we had, as I was working through the sales pieces and we're speaking to their customers and speaking with their partners and finding out what we can do better, I had a phone call from the CEO, and the CEO said, "Hey, Brian, the development team have heard what you're doing and they have sales ideas." And we had this call this morning. Oh my God, there was 6 incredible sales initiatives. And I'm not just talking about sales ideas on a piece of paper. I mean initiatives that they want to start, build, and run because they feel bad that their incredible software is not being put out to the world. That's what I'm talking about. You have a lot of the sales resources that you need inside your own organization, prepared to do whatever they need to do to make sure that you're successful. You have this. These people are around you. They're in the form of it. In their case, they had it in their development team, which is not an obvious place to look for the best sales initiatives, but they had it there. For you, it might be in your advisors. It might be in your partners. It might be in your friends. It might be in the people who are around you. It can be anywhere, but you have to look. You have no choice. And in a market like this where things are really tough, you got to look even harder. Okay, that is my piece for today. I want to bring David Bass in, and David's going to join us. And you got some nice greenery behind you there. David, you're looking well.
Thank you, Brian. Pleasure to speak with you today.
And you as well. Are they real plants?
They are. It's my backyard.
Come on. You know, when you live in the virtual world of Zoom and Google for long enough, it's like, wow, it's like a real tree. There are real trees.
Right, exactly. I mean, I picked this specifically so you could see my beautiful real plants. That's not my entire house.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. I absolutely love it. But it's great to have you on. I want you to tell folks a little bit about yourself because you've got a multitude of experiences. I think a little bit like me, we get classified in the area that we make our money in, right? So folks might say, Brian is a VC. But honestly, I kind of suck as a VC. I know I've made 300 investments, but I kind of suck. But I'm a really, really, really good growth hacker. Like, that's my piece. And if you said to me, well, growth hacker can't be everything, I'd be like, fair. I'm a really, really, really good brander. And that's because I'm originally from Ireland, and the only thing we know how to do is storytell. And so because of a lifelong history of storytelling, I just happen to be an amazing brander and storytelling. But the best money that I can make from branding and storytelling is from making out of venture capitalism, right? And so it's very much like yourself. So you know what? Let's share a little bit about you first, and then let's get into the real conversation of how do we build great founders and help them build. It could be a unicorn, it could be 100 million. Like, I don't give a shit. As long as somebody can walk away with an outcome that doesn't require them ever to having to work again, then it's a great outcome. So how do we get people there?
Okay, so the 3-word answer about what I am, in contrast to what you're saying, is that I'm an extremely good strategist, I'm a very good teacher, and I'm very good at being supportive. And I genuinely care and desire to help people. So,
which is more important of those 4 qualities?
Probably the most important is a desire to care and help and make a difference. Fair. That's probably the most important. Okay, so I'm going to give you the 30-second elevator pitch of my background. So I had the fortune to be born into a family that had enough money to give me an education. I never had to worry about whether or not I was going to have something to eat the next day, or be able to afford my clothes, or get a good education. And I knew that pretty early on. And my thought was, well, I know this. What can I do for people who aren't in the same camp? I want to do something to help. This was just total luck. I want to help. And so my original idea was, when I was in college, I was a double major in political science and philosophy, because I was going to work for a politician. And then I graduated and I got into a very good school, the London School of Economics, for a master's degree in political science and philosophy. And I realized that if I really wanted to help people, the inherent nature of the political system is running around in circles. You might accomplish one thing every 5 to 10 years. And if you do that, you've done an amazing job. And I just didn't think that was efficient enough. I thought that there had to be a way to be more efficient to help people than once every decade. So for a variety of reasons, I decided to go to law school, because I could realize I could do more good outside the system than inside of it. And when I was in law school, I thought, oh, I want to do litigation. That's great. It's fun. I mean, it's a lot of interesting ideas, et cetera, et cetera. And then I graduated and realized, oh, wait, this is not where the problems start. The problems start way before that. And if people can avoid these problems before they even arise, they're going to be in much, much better shape. And I think of myself as an inherently creative individual, and somebody who sees a problem and goes, wait, why is that still a problem? Why aren't we fixing that? We should do this, this, and this, or that and that to fix that problem. Yeah. And a lot of the law firms I worked at had the attitude of, wait, why would we fix that? We're already doing it this way. We've been doing it that way for 20 years. Why would we change anything? And my thought was, well, that's just dumb. Why aren't we doing it this other way? This is so much more efficient.
Because they're in the business of billing and you're in the business of solving.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. And so I started my own law firm, because my focus is exactly what Brian is saying, is solving and supporting and creating. So I started my own law firm in exactly the same place that all the founders are. It just happens that I'm a service and not a product, but it's exactly the same motivation of, there's a problem, no one is doing it the way I think they should do it, I'm going to do it myself.
That's cool.
So
because it's not the easy road. Like,
no,
it's a very tough road, because you deal with exactly the same problems as founders, like the trust, the building, the everything. And you realize that actually the vast majority of customers are not actually looking in their mind. When they find a great solution, then they're looking for it. But before that, they're just looking for whatever they got provided before. So even convincing them away from terrible solutions is very difficult. So yeah, I feel you.
So part of the reason that I specialize in early stage startups is because of exactly that. A lot of people have asked me, so what kind of customers do you generally take? And I say, okay, so it's not like Series A, Series B, Series C. That's kind of irrelevant for my purposes. What's important is the mentality of the company. When they get to the point of we're doing this because we've always done it this way and it's too difficult to change, that's when I say, go find somebody new. But if I come to them and say, hey, I have this really good idea, you should do it this way for these 10 very good reasons, do it that way. And they go, great, you're the lawyer, we trust you, we'll do it that way. Those are my companies. Those are my founders. And my goal and my desire and drive is that I understand the law. I'm a lawyer. And founders tend to avoid the law because it's scary and confusing and overwhelming. Yeah. But what ends up happening is a problem that would have been pretty easy to fix now. If it's ignored, it becomes catastrophic later on. It might destroy the company. Yeah. And so my goal is to help founders understand and navigate the legal system. So when the problems come up, they are prepared and ready for it. And it's just another day at the office. It's just another fire to put out. And it's not a company destroying issue. So that gives you...
Yeah, that's beautiful. Like it's so crazy in startup because we kind of start just fixing this thing, right? We don't think of it backwards. We think of it forwards. And if we thought of it backwards and we said, actually, the probability, forget probability, like we're building $1 billion company and $1 billion company is like a $300 million outcome. And if we did something slightly different now, that's going to be a $350 million outcome. Like, would you like the extra $50 million? They'd be like, dude, cool. That's like sick. I would love that. But because we're building it, forward, like we don't think about it. And it kind of reaches this stage where you just, all these things like, and the thing is like, I cannot stress enough the magnitude of order here. Like, because something that's small at the beginning, it grows and grows and grows and grows and grows until you have this thing where you have this terrible outcome. And terrible outcome isn't always that you have more dilution or less money. It could be that you hire the wrong person, you don't do the right thing, you don't tell them in the right way, you sign the wrong contract with the wrong people, you get sued by other people. Like there's so many, like in early stage startup, nobody gives a shit about you when you're poor. But when you're rich, you can sure as shit believe that they will come after you for every little silly thing that you forgot to do until you've nothing left.
Yep. And my goal is to help you avoid that. An early stage startup, a really early stage problem that I use as an example frequently is what I call a tiebreaker clause. So let's say you found a company and you're doing really well and there's 2 co-founders and you're 50-50 and you're 12 months down the road and you can't agree about something. Under the law, there are 2 ways to break the tie. One founder sues the other, or 2, you dissolve the company. Yeah. That's it. There are no other options. However, if way before that, you create a thing called the founders agreement and you put in a tiebreaker clause into the founders agreement, you are able to determine in advance what happens if there's a tie. Do you want to select a VC you trust to break the tie? Do you want to say founder A is the tiebreaker in these 5 areas and founder B is the tiebreaker in these 5 areas? Do you want to go to mediation? There are an infinity of possibilities of things you can do if you think about it in advance. If you don't, there are 2 really terrible options, and that's it. And the other thing I forgot to mention, and I think is really important, is that I firmly believe in democratizing the legal process. A lot of lawyers have the opinion of, I'm not going to tell you this, and I'm not going to help you to understand how the law works, because then you have to pay me more money. I think that is truly ridiculous, especially so in the area of founders.
I love this. And
So,
I really want to dig into, by the way, as usual, please, I'm encouraging people. There's always lots of questions on here. You should have questions in the area of legal. And so throw in questions as they're coming through, as we're chatting through this, and I'll bring those questions up on the screen. You brought up something, and I also really, David, want to get in on strategies with you too. But you brought up something really interesting at the start, which was the thing that many years ago, my wife brought up. And I was like, hey, I'm so good. I did this. And she's like, well, okay, let's put this into perspective. It's a marathon, right? And it's 26 miles. And because you got to go to a good school and you got to, and I didn't go to like an Ivy League. And I didn't even make it to college actually, but like I made it, but I had the opportunities to be able to do it, to your point. Like I could have, it was choice based. And so I didn't really start at mile one. I kind of started compared to the rest of the world. There's probably 3 or 4 billion people who didn't get a chance to go through that. So I kind of started at mile 7 and mile 8. And then like my old man was an accountant. And even though he had like terrible arthritis and very difficult and poor fella, died very young, I still got the benefit of like all of the amazing things that he taught me about accounting and bookkeeping and everything else. Like whether I chose to listen at the time, it's still like sunk in. I didn't have a choice. And so I didn't really start at mile 6. I kind of started at mile 9. And then I had the opportunity to come to the US, and I had the opportunity to like do incredible things here and build up huge networks here. So I didn't really have to even finish the whole 26 miles. I really, there was an Uber waiting for me at mile like 19. So yeah, like I ran a little bit, but let's go to like, I'm not even gonna do the Africa thing. Like, let's just take somebody who's living in Compton in LA, right? And they come out and they got the gangs all around them, and they can't study and they can't work and they can't go to school without the thing getting burnt down, and everything's against them. Well, they're not starting at mile 1. They're starting at like mile -6. So what you said just at the very beginning of this is, I think it's very beautiful and it's very important. And in a world that is filled full of hate and separation and all kinds of terrible things right now, I do think that what you're doing, the world needs so much more of it for our general survival. But more importantly, like we're fucking dicks if we don't do it. And most people don't do it for the reasons that, anyway, you get it.
Yeah. So exactly what you said. So a couple of things that I try to do to support that belief in exactly what you're saying. One, I try to keep my prices reasonably low. I am entirely online. I don't have an office. I don't have much staff. And I charge you exactly what's needed. If it takes 3 hours, I'm going to charge you 3 hours. I'm not going to find a BS reason to charge you 7 hours so I can inflate my bills. I don't have like a billable hours target. I don't care. My goal is to help people, not to make as much money as possible. Sure, I want to have a living and I want to support myself and all that stuff, right? But that is not my goal. And then 2, I actually started a YouTube channel called Insufferable Experts with 2 other founders, one of whom is a lawyer, for exactly this reason. Because if you can't afford a lawyer, at least you can watch a YouTube video.
Yeah.
And we talk about what it's like to be a founder. Do I even want to be a founder? What is involved with that? What are some of the legal outcomes? What are some of the things I should be looking at? All of that stuff. Because at the very least, I can show you a video. And my firm belief is that take the leap, go for it. But at least you should know what you're jumping into. Know what's in front of you so you're prepared when it gets there. It's going to be scary and dangerous. Absolutely. That's the inherent nature of starting a company. But at least know what you're jumping into.
Got to. And nobody does, because they're going forward. So look, just my last comment on what you just said there again is, you know, be in a place of helping people, but put your own mask on first, right? Make sure that you're in a good, strong place, that you've got your business going well, but there's always time for sharing, and there's always time for helping, and there's always time for paying it forward, even if it would be in the time that you would have been watching a Netflix movie, because we owe it to the world. Okay, so strategies and tactics for early stage founders. I like the tiebreaker clause. I think that's really good. I have not heard that before. I mean, I really like it. But like, if you're going forward, and one of the things that I say to founders a lot is, you see these 2 founders, they come in, 50-50. There's no vesting. And then they're like, well, we're not going to do vesting because dude, it's like, you don't understand. You're screwed. If you just go both in with a 50-50, and it turns out that actually that co-founder is not the love of your life that you thought they were going to be, that first night that you spent that beautiful, passionate evening together, well, you are done for. And your great, incredible business. So maybe we start there on like things that we should suggest, and then just randomly throw a load of stuff out.
Yeah. So I kind of think of it as a platonic marriage of sorts between two co-founders. We recently released a video on my YouTube channel called The Founder Marriage. And I think the way you think about it is exactly that. But the problem is you can't exactly go on dates with your co-founder. Yeah. So the first thing you need to do before founding a company is sit down and have a bunch of really unpleasant conversations. What happens when things go wrong? And this is like 50% the law and 50% just relationships. Things are going to go wrong. Bad stuff is going to happen. How do you react when that happens? Are you able to calmly discuss it and say, I disagree, here's why, and then come up with a solution going forward? So, 1, who's responsible for what areas? Do you think you're the genius for everything? You're not. I know that I'm terrible at some things. I'm great at the law, and there are other things that I'm not good at. Figure out what you're not good at very quickly and find a founder who makes up for all of your shortcomings.
Yeah,
and then 2,
go on.
What about money? Who's going to pay for stuff? Who's going to get the losses? How quickly do you need money? How much do you need from a VC? Do you even want to go to a VC? All of that stuff is vitally important. Because I was just talking to a founder last week who I was talking about profits and saying, look, if you immediately need to put any money you make back into your company, you're not going to make a unicorn. Because most founders do, and what they should do, is take most of the money and put it back into the business. That is what should be happening. And if what you need is to support your kids and put them through school immediately, that's great. But being a founder is probably not for you. The way I think about it, and I was talking about this a few weeks ago with some friends and on one of my videos, is that you need to figure out what you value the most. Do you value stability? Do you value knowing exactly what's going to happen tomorrow? In that case, don't found a company. Because founding a company is inherently chaotic. That's kind of just the nature of the beast. And for those of us who found companies and who like the chaos, great. That's why we're here in the first place. But if that's not what you like, do not become a founder, right? So I think the first step is to understand even, do I want to be a founder? And is this person the person who I want to found with? So that's step 1.
But also to build a clause, because it's very hard. Look, I have a ton of founders. First of all, just on a totally separate subject, but maybe a little bit related. I had these kids. I had one of these schools that made the miscalculation of bringing the kids in to see me to get, life and career advice. And my advice to everybody is, look, life is slavery. Literally work is modern slavery, nothing else than that. And it used to be, even from modern slavery, people were able to retire at the age of 40 or 50 because they can get out. That's done for now. Inflation and the value of money has done us for good. So now they're talking about the average retirement is going to be 75. So there's no point. There's no point in retiring unless you love your job, which puts you in 0.0000000 nothing percent. Then you're going to have a miserable life for your entire life. But if you can found a company very early, I do think, David, the fact that school doesn't teach us any of the structure about founding companies doesn't mean that it's not one of the only escapes out of it. And so yes. I just said to the whole class, I'm like, hey, guys, you can go and work. And I'm very biased about this, but you're screwed if you work. You're done for. right? Because you'll just be encouraged to spend more and more money because life, especially in America, you got to go to college is like a couple of $100,000 now. Then you got to go and you're going to get married. You're going to get married. That's going to cost you money. Then you're going to need an apartment. Then the apartment's going to turn into a house. Then you're going to have a kid. Then your kid's going to go to college. And so you're down 10 million before you start.
Yeah.
And so I think like founding a business is almost a vocation that can be learned. But by the same token, if you found with the wrong person, one of the problems a lot of our founders have had is that they will find a CTO and they'll be like, this is the most dope CPO that's ever been here. It's like, how do you know? Like, you're a business development person. Like, how do you know this person doesn't suck? And the chances are they do suck for what you want to build. And then you're going to end up in this terrible place in the future. But like, how can they protect themselves from that?
Okay, so there are a couple of ways. There is no magic bullet, right? So thinking that there is a magic bullet is a mistake. So that's number one. Number two is you don't know what you don't know. That's where I come in. And that's where other experts come in. So talk to a lot of experts and then find a group of a small group of experts who you trust, right? So like I do the same thing myself. I know what I don't know. And so I found a small group of experts who I trust. For example, I'm currently in the process of building the website for my firm. I am not a web developer. I do not think I am a web developer. So I went and hired a web developer to help me build my website. So find a small circle of people who you trust.
And I would even argue that, like, to your point on a small group of people, you probably hired the wrong web developer because your small group of people didn't involve a person who's a great web developer who can tell you if this web developer is good or bad.
I hired the wrong web developer first. I hired a web developer initially who was terrible, and I threw a bunch of money at it, and it was a disaster. And 8 drafts later, the logos they were sending me looked like clip art from the 90s. And eventually I just gave up and was like, okay, this is not working. So I think that's the other thing of you need to give yourself grace that you are going to make mistakes.
I do want to, though, I just want to layer in on top. I want to answer this afterwards. But before we get to the seminar's question, like, there are solutions for co-founding. Like, you can build a vesting agreement inside with them, right? And a vesting agreement is a very simple way of being able to say, look, both of us vest, not just you. We both vest. And if we find out that in a 12-month period, and there's a cliff, right? And the cliff is like 6 months or 12 months or 3 months or whatever. And if we find out that we were not meant to be, then it's done. It's over. Like, one person walks with the company and then the other person will not necessarily be there. And so I like, there are things you can do. What I suppose what you're hearing from David, and definitely as well from me as well, is just that, like, don't just jump in and just race forward with things. Like, and I really like that idea of surrounding yourself with like 5 or 6. I really like masterminds. I think masterminds are wonderful, but having like 5 or 6 really incredible people that are around you in your circle, and those people are supporting you and you're able to ask questions and get advice from them, I think is invaluable. And even to put it in as a weekly behavior that you do is a great idea.
Yeah. And so to answer this question from the seminar, what's the most common legal mistake early stage startups make that jeopardize future funding rounds is just sort of what Brian was saying, is lack of clarity. So that's the takeaway, is be clear about as many things as possible. And I'm going to give you some specifics legal, but the overarching idea is lack of clarity and not thinking about what comes next. You need to think about what's coming tomorrow, next week, a year from now, and 10 years from now. What's going to go wrong? And that's my job. Law school and being a lawyer is literally training you to think about everything that could go wrong.
Could you give him like an example of something though, David? Like, just maybe one thing, like, because we said vesting. I think vesting, like co-founder relationship problems is like one really big thing. What are the big things that you see?
I'd say co-founder relationship problems is the biggest thing. I recently saw a statistic from a Harvard Business School professor who said that 65% of companies fail because of co-founder problems. Wow. So that is the biggest issue. The other big issue along those lines is, if I was a VC And somebody came to me and I was like, this is a great idea. Absolutely. You really seem to know what you're doing. You two have a great relationship. There are two things that would stop me from investing. One, if your legal documents are a mess. So I was thinking about this beforehand, and I think it's important to say, I think people sometimes fetishize cap tables. I don't think they're as complicated or as confusing as people think they are. It's really just an Excel spreadsheet of who owns what, right? And if you have clarity in who owns what, great. Then me as the VC, I'm absolutely going to be interested. And two, be aware of where you are and where you want to go, right? If you're like, I am a world-breaking company and you have 10 customers, no, you're not, right? But I think I can be a world-breaking company. Great. How are you going to get there? Give me your grand idea and then practical steps on how to get there. So that's both legal and non-legal, but legally, make sure your documents are clear. If you walk into a VC and you're like, well, I have this letter saying that I get this agreement. No, make your legal documents as clearly as possible. And that's where somebody like me comes in at the beginning. Because not only is it useful for a VC, but when you inevitably do end up in litigation, it is going to save you so much money. Because the litigator is going to go, oh, great, you have all these documents. Great, I can write a document right. I can write an argument right now.
I actually really like that. Keep your documents. So for example, me with every single founder that we invest into, I keep every email forever. They never go. I'll like delete the spam, but anything that's got to do with that founder. So if we have a case, we had one case with a founder that was a fraud, and I have every email back to 2021, every single one. Like it will always be, and I keep them on files on my emails. If I need to save things, I'll save it on my desktop. But like my Gmail must have 10,000 emails in there, and I don't mind. It's worth it. It's worth it on a monthly basis. How do you balance investor rights with founder control, especially in early rounds?
So I think that's kind of a complicated question, and you need to look at what investor rights we're talking about. That's a little vague. So and it also depends on, you need to look at what's important to you to keep control of, right? So like,
well, number one would be the board.
Yeah.
Because the moment you lose control of the board, you might as well say goodbye to your company, because you don't know, you don't have your company anymore, right?
And I think this is where it's important to talk about a little discussed fact, is that there are two kinds of ownership in a company. There is the legal right to a company and the profits right to a company, right? And those are two completely different things. I can have 50-50 control of the company and 1% right to the profits.
Yeah.
And so that's really important. And the other thing people need to understand is, effectively, we keep talking about 50-50, but in terms of control of the company, 49-51 is identical to 1% and 99%. It does not matter. If one person has 1% more than you, they can always outvote you. It does not matter how much more. In terms of profits, that's way more important. So with investor rights, make sure you understand what they're asking and what they can tell you to do, right? And what you're giving up in order to get their money in. And that's number one. And number two, where is this investor coming from? Do they only care about making you go through an exit in as short as time as possible? Then maybe that's not for you. What kind of a company do you want? Do you
doesn't matter. I think every investor is going to be like that, right? Some investors may be more flexible, but like a lot of investors are going to want to get people out. But in truth, as long as you have control of your board, it doesn't really matter. Like the investors can say whatever they want to you, and you can write back and be like, "Yo, no."
Yeah, exactly. So, which is interesting, and one of the things that I firmly believe is that you should say where you're not an expert. And Brian is way more of an expert in balancing investor rights with founder control than I am, because he's the investor. He's done this a million more times than I have from that perspective. I only have the perspective of advising people on the law. So yeah, I completely agree with what Brian says, 100%.
You know what's funny? Here's the thing that about people where what you do is so important, David, is that we're just really complicated and we don't even know what we're thinking half the time. And the one thing that's consistent with all legal battles is I've never known anyone to be in a legal battle with someone else and to say, I'm totally in the wrong. like like they just don't do it. But I do think also there's clues to your point. Like you made actually a really good point, which I jumped over to the board and I shouldn't have gone over so fast. The thing about people is that whether it's investors or whether it's founders, like the internet has got lots of proof of stuff that's happened before. And success leads clues, and so does failure, and so does nastiness. And so there are so many ways to be able to find out if somebody is good to have with you or not. And so even though the board is one way, I've also seen investors that have bullied money out of founders and said that and shared stories and terrible stories which have destroyed the founding team from the beginning. And even though the investor had no ability on the board, no stock, no anything, because that investor, and it was an investor in this case, but honestly, it could have been an investor, it could have been a mentor, it could have been a co-founder, it could have been anyone, because they knew that the moment anything looks like it's smoke, and that will create the impression that there has to be fire there as well, they knew that they could extort money out. So just be very, very, very careful about the people that you're bringing in. Get really good, honest, personal, emotional references from people that have worked with that person about what the outcome was. Just be so careful. I think you've probably seen it, and I've seen it too, David. I can literally count on one hand the amount of amazing relationships which stayed strong and good and nobody attacking anybody all the way through to the end.
Yeah. I mean, that's happened to me in my personal life and in my legal life, et cetera, right? Like, so the most important thing is the relationship and dealing with conflict, because bad things will happen. And that's why it's so important to have a good network. So I have a really good friend who is a psychologist, and she works for the sheriff's department. And so gets called out to those disaster situations where somebody is holding a gun to somebody else and the police are trying to convince them to stand down. And what she said was, nobody gets to that terrible situation without a series of really, really bad decisions. No one wakes up in the morning and says, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go hold up a bank. It's a series of really, really bad decisions, and nobody's saying, maybe you should think about this. This is not a good idea, right? So that's, again, why that like group of 5 or 6 or 7 people is so important, and you need to listen to them. If 5 people are telling you this is a terrible idea, who you trust, really strongly consider it. Not necessarily that they're right, but you should really, really think about it before you decide that you're right.
Yeah.
So you don't end up in a situation.
In a bad place. So I'll incorporate 2 questions in the same place here because they're kind of good. The first one is early legal signals make a startup more attractive for acquisition. And then the second one is most cost-effective way to protect trademarks and branding when you're on a lean budget. Because I think one of the things that makes a company attractive for acquisition is trademarks, are things that show that there's a moat, maybe is better said. But what are the things? I'm sure like having legal documents in a really good, simple way will add at least confidence that the place isn't a mess. But like if you're thinking of maybe a list of things that folks looking for an acquisition like to see, where would you put it from a legal side?
Yeah. Okay. So the boring, obvious answer is legal clarity, right? So like there's the joke in abstract that if you ask like a founder or a marketing person what an ideal legal document looks like, it's 1 page. And if you ask a lawyer, what does an ideal legal document look like? It's like 700 pages, right? Obviously, that's completely impractical and nobody is suggesting that.
Yeah.
But what you want to do is find that middle ground. And one, and two, making sure that you actually understand what all of your legal documents say. So that's where it's necessary to go to a lawyer and say, I don't understand what this says. What does this actually say? Right? So if when you go into a meeting with a VC and you're talking about acquisition and they ask you something about the law, you can answer the question. And one, and two, having, I don't know, let me ask my lawyer. They will get back to you quickly. Right? So that's the most important thing in terms of legal, of I have all my ducks in a row, right? Like I can provide you here's a file with 30 documents and it lays out really clearly that all my rights are here. Great. That is what I want to see. There's no ambiguity. Of course, that's perfect, right? Nobody is expecting perfect, but in order to understand like what you're going for, I'm going to tell you what's perfect. So intellectual property is super, super complicated. And so I'm going to start from the background before we get into trademarks and start the basis of what even is intellectual property and what are the different kinds of intellectual property, because I don't think this gets talked about enough. Broadly, there are 4 kinds of intellectual property: copyright, trademark, patent, and trade secrets. Trade secrets is simultaneously the easiest and the most complicated. So I'm going to leave that for the last. Patents is probably the clearest. It's sciencey stuff. I am not a scientist. My degree is in political science and philosophy and economics and all that kind of stuff. And the law, not in engineering. Right? So it's sciencey stuff. How is this thing designed? And so you need to know whether or not you need a patent. You probably don't, but you might, right? And then there's copyright and trademark. And I'm going to talk about those at the same time because they're easiest to understand as like contrasts to each other. Copyright is anything creative that is a longer form work. And the idea is that copyright comes into being at the moment it's created. So if I'm writing a book, while I'm writing it, I get a copyright over it. But you can also file for it, and can get a little bit more complicated, but that's the basic idea. So as I'm creating something, I am making the copyright over it. So a book, right? So importantly, you cannot get intellectual property protection except for some special exceptions in the entertainment space over ideas. Ideas are not legally protectable. And then, so that's copyright, like a book or a dance or like a piece of music, all that kind of stuff. Trademarks broadly fall into 2 categories: a couple of words, or an image, or occasionally how something appears or a color, if they're really, really iconic. So a good example of the color part is Christian Louboutin. The red color on the bottom of his high heels is so iconic by this point that he was able to copyright it. Tiffany blue. But that's the level of iconic we're talking about. So that's not going to happen overnight. We're talking years and years and years. Or it's called trade dress, the Coke bottle, right, with those curves. That's the level we're talking about. So that's
also,
not cool.
David, you have on the other side of it that you also need to be very careful. Like, so it's interesting here. Another question here from Pranav on best way to legally protect your startup if a co-founder employee leaves and joins for a competitor. I'll just look. I want to add in one extra comment here, and then let you have the last words. We're in the last 5 minutes or so, and so I want to be able to wrap it into a nice bow so people can go away very clear. My personal, again, I see it from 2 sides. on one side of it, everything David is saying to you is like, be a grown up. If you're going to get married, don't look like you're going out every single night drinking with your buddies, and that you got to go faster car, and that you got nowhere to live, and that you're with your mom and your dad, and you've got no money. Like, because you ain't going to have a good marriage at the beginning, or it's going to be very tough because you're not prepared. So everything David's saying is like, create the preparation to make sure that the relationship that you're looking to move into, which is, by the way, a paying relationship on the other side, that relationship looks like that they're buying the opportunity to get involved with someone or something which is going to add value to them. And there is structures that you have behind them. And the whole patent area is like, if you put your patents up there, it's there for everyone to see. That's a good thing and it's a bad thing, right? So you may want to protect yourself on that level, but you can put patent pending, or you can not worry about the patents and you can build other moats in there. I will tell you how I personally deal with that stuff, allowing for the fact that I recognize that everything that David is saying about having process, systems, and structure, both legally and outside around your company, is a prerequisite for making sure you're okay. Being educated and aware about how things can go wrong is a prerequisite. Having folks around you who can give you good advice and support and help is a prerequisite. And there are lots of great resources online, not just David's videos, that can actually tell you the things you need to know. Be educated, aware, and prepared, or this thing will eat you up. When it comes to just quick protections, I have none, right? If I get a great new program that we build for our founders, I give it to Techstars. Y Combinator didn't care because they don't need them anymore. But like, I give them to every accelerator who wants them happily. Why? Because I want to build better. I don't want to sit on my laurels on what was built before. That's my personal strategy. I know that like when innovation dies, so does the founder. And the more you keep innovating and getting better and better and better, the more your like fait accompli gets there in the end. The more you are terrifyingly protecting the only little bit of value that you add to your customers, the more you're worried about it. And the more sciencey your company is, the difference it is. But okay, so that all being said, David, the last 2 or 3 minutes are yours. Wrap it up for us. Early stage founders all listening to this. Everybody wants to be prepared. Some people thinking about patents, people thinking about companies being set up. We have cross-border compliance, which has just come up as far as fixed before raising from international CVs. And then we have like also another question in here. Is it okay to delay incorporation and operate as a project until funding? So there's lots of stuff. So yes, let me say the last 5 minutes, take the last 3 to 5 minutes and just sum up the most important things that people need to know to be covered legally so that they have the best opportunity of being successful in this thing.
Okay. Number one, this is the most broad. Lawyers are going to tell you you need to be perfect. You don't. Talk about the things that are like vitally important. And some like basic ideas, right? Like understand what you're getting into. Number one, understand what you're jumping into. So know what the life of a founder is like and whether or not this is the person you want to do it with, or if you just want to do it on your own. Number two, incorporation is vitally important. That is probably, along with a founder's agreement, those are the two things that I think are the most important. Under the law, if you don't have a corporation, you default to what's called a general partnership. And under a general partnership, you are personally liable for everything that goes wrong. So having a corporation is vitally important. And number three, know what's vitally important and what can wait. What is something that you can do eventually? Generally, I put IP under a lot of that stuff. Unless you're developing the next miracle vaccine, you probably don't need IP immediately. What you do need immediately is corporate protection. So I'm going to summarize from the most broad to understand your relationships, and understand what you're getting yourself into. Have a clear idea of what you're trying to accomplish and how you're going to get there and who does what. And then 3, have a basic legal structure. So I think those are the 3 most important things.
I like it, my friend. Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone. Awesome. How can people contact you?
So I'm available at Insufferable Experts. My email address is david.rb as in Roger Bravo .bass @gmail.com. Or you can contact me on Instagram, although I don't use Instagram that much. I'm much more of like an email, YouTube kind of guy. So those are the best ways to contact me. We also have an Instagram page for my channel and stuff like that.
Awesome. And Kishley's put it up on the screen, so you have got it there. Thank you. Thank you, David. Great session. Thank you, everybody. This is why we are here. You guys are all super engaged, as you always were. And anybody who needs to reach out to David, you've got all of his details there. And I will see you here same time next week.
Thank you, Brian.